Good evening. My name is Kim Finley, and I'm with Case's Marketing and Communications Office, and we're happy that you all joined us this evening for this news conference with Harry Belefonte. I'd like to introduce you to Eric Hammond. He's the co-chair of the University Program Board. They're the student group who's sponsoring Mr. Belefonte's talk this evening. So I'll just turn it over to Eric.
Hello. Firstly, I just want to say I had the chance to actually talk with Mr. Belefonte a few minutes ago in his hotel room. I have seen professors of all sorts at Case Western Reserve University who have degrees from Harvard, and I just want to say that this man is absolutely a genius. And really, he is. And basically, a lot of people have asked me why he was brought to Case. And I wrote him a letter back in August, basically stating that your message would especially benefit a city such as Cleveland that was recently identified as the nation's poorest big city. And I also talked about a controversial local school levy that just failed in Cleveland when voters on the west side of Cleveland voted against it, and too few African Americans on the east side failed to exercise their right to vote. I told Mr. Belefonte that his help was needed in Cleveland, and he responded.
Good evening. I really have no opening remarks. All that I will say, I'm going to save for the little chat I'm going to have with the students in a few minutes. But the request for this press conference found me with an appetite for such an encounter. So if the press has any questions that they would like to ask, I just say let's get right into it.
Mr. Belefante, I have a couple of questions.
Would you identify yourself for me?
My name is Bobby Jackson. I work for Cleveland Public Radio and TV.
Mm-hmm.
Idea Stream. I'm working on a piece about a book written by an author named Kevin Finney called Soul American: How Black Music Transformed White Culture. And I know that you produced this amazing book. I'd like to get it on tape, your answer on tape, if you don't mind. And basically, I have a couple of questions. And my first question is, I'm going to come up here and not be shy. Someone conducted an interview with B.B. King and said that it seems that African Americans are always looking forward in terms of pushing the envelope in creating music and rarely look back in repertory kinds of engagements with music. And B.B. said to him, well, white people can afford to look back in what they call the good old days. For African Americans, there are no good old days, and we need to look forward so that we can create better tomorrows. But you paused to look back, and you created this 6 CD box set, The Long Road to Freedom. Why did you do that?
Well, although I can understand B.B. King's motivation and his reason for having that view, I have found that a part of the links that are missing from our continuity as a people, and that America in general misses, is that we have very little identity and very little regard for the history from which we have come. Not just black America, but white America. We have never really had a fair and open debate in this country on the dynamics of slavery. As a matter of fact, if you mention the word slavery, you find that there's an inordinate response, either hostile or those who would choose to deny that there's any reason for such a debate. And those of us who are the descendants of that slavery have been the ones who have perpetually suffered the most in all that we've aspired to do to make America live up to its promise. so that I believe that the more we know about our past, the more we are enlightened about what to do with the future, and it gives us a greater insight into why we have the kind of complicated encounters we have in the present. I think the past is very important, not just for Black America, as I said before, but I think white America is also very much in need of that.
I have one more question. Were there any surprises that you learned from your engagement in the process of creating the Long Road to Freedom? And did you find yourself in a different place emotionally, intellectually, having gone through that process?
Well, although I had a passion, and I felt that there were many rewards to be revealed in the pursuit of that work, I myself was amazed about how much I did not know. And in the course of study, in the course of research, in the course of reaching out to people like Mary Evans, University of Indiana, the African Studies program, as well as English major, and all that we went through in the archives, looking at how to track Black history through its music, much was revealed to us. Our verbal requirement, the fact that much of our life and our history is buried in our oral tradition, was constantly being revealed each time we looked at songs, did some analysis of where the songs originated, under what conditions did they emerge, and we were more than rewarded with what we found. We tried to put all of that information in the text in which we found in the work, and I'm glad it caught your attention.
Very much so. I'm going to let the floor.
Good. Do you have some water? Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Would you tell us something about your early years in Jamaica and how much influence that had in your life?
Caribbean? Jamaica?
Your uncle used to be the preacher at the mother's church.
Well, I tell you, life has been persistently filled with coincidences. I wake up every day with things walking into my little space that I have not quite anticipated. Small, tiny things that to some people would seem insignificant, and other things that are larger than life itself. I had no real control over the fact that I was taken back to the Caribbean in my earliest years. My mother was an immigrant woman. She came to America expecting, like all immigrants who came here, that there would be some promise that would be unfolded. And she found that that was not quite the case. And in concerns for her children, she took us back to the Caribbean in the belief that we would be safer in that environment than we would have been in the streets of New York. So that off and on for the first 12 years of my life, I was rooted in Jamaica, in the mountains, in the village in which she was born and where she grew up. That fact did not reveal itself as in terms of its enormous reward until later in life, when I had made certain moves towards my life in art, my life in culture, and I found that going back to the roots of the Caribbean, looking at the roots of the Middle Passage and slavery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I was given a chance to reveal for myself and for the world at large the remarkable culture that exists in that region. Needless to say that obviously a lot of people were attracted to that because the inordinate success that I have been experiencing was really rooted in the fact that that music caught the fancy of people in the world. The Banana Boat, Deo, which was part of a compilation of music and songs that came from the region, was the first album in the history of the recording business to sell 1 million copies. And I can understand why RCA delighted in that fact. It held great economic results. But for me, what it did was to inspire me to look more deeply into the cultures of the world and began to help me include in my own repertoire the songs of people from all over, focusing primarily on Africa. And when I brought Miriam Makeba and wonderful artists like Huey Masekela and Letta Mbulu and Kaifa Semenya, who captured the fancy of the American people and made a large contribution to world music, I knew that I had been given the opportunity to open a door and to give people a chance to understand their neighbors in the world. I believe that culture gives us an opportunity to know about the beauty of diversity, to let us be less fearful of the things we don't know than to sit in anguish and in fear of what we suspect may be out there. I've always felt that diversity was something that was there to reward us, not to hold us in distance from one another. And having the opportunity to put the music of the Caribbean before the audiences that I played to has carried its own message and has given me its great reward. It became the platform for which my social activism was able to express itself more fully. A mentor of mine by the name of Paul Robeson, a great black American intellectual and artist, and one of the greatest voices in the 20th century for America, once said to me when he heard me perform very early in my life, he said to me, "Get them to sing your song," meaning the world, the audience. "Get them to sing your song, and they'll want to know who you are." And with that capacity, or with that event, I would have an opportunity to say things that I've been saying ever since people began to take a curiosity into who I was and why I do the things I do. And that still prevails.
Mr. Belefonte,
Yes.
you were talking about some of your platform recently. Some of your comments about President Bush have caused some controversy, particularly your statements in Venezuela. Any regret over how any of that played out?
Any regrets
Yeah.
on my part?
Yes.
Absolutely not. Why should I be regretful?
Just.
Why do you assume I should be regretful?
I'm not assuming you should.
You said any regrets.
I'm just asking if you did that.
How about any celebration?
Did you? What about it?
I tell you, I said what I said because I truly believe it. And I said it because I think it needs to be stated. And I will not retreat from my remarks. Why should I run from the truth? Truth to power. That's what this is all about. There's a war out here. People are dying, not just in Iraq, but in the United States of America, down in New Orleans, in Katrina. People are dying in the streets of America, in South Central LA, in over the Rhine in Cincinnati, a lot of places. People are suffering. And our government and our president has expressed a great indifference to that fact. And that fact has driven terror into the hearts of people who have had expectations and hopes. And in the face of that fact, I said what I said. We've been misled. We've been lied to as a people. We were lied to about why we should have gone to war in Iraq. That has already been revealed. I didn't reveal it. The truth revealed itself, and it's been discussed on almost every level of social debate, and that fact has stayed the course. Well, if you know this, why aren't we talking about it more openly? Why aren't we saying what we know? We've been betrayed. Liars run this country. Money is being stolen. Money is being unaccounted for. Big corporations are getting bigger. And the world is slowly sinking into a kind of an abyss. And we have a big hand in this. And I think the men and women who are administering the affairs of this nation, most of whom are there illegally, need to be held accountable. And not only should they be held accountable, they should be replaced. So I have no ambivalence. I regret nothing. I have not regretted anything I've done in my life. I have not regretted my commitment to civil rights when I was called a communist and Dr. King was called a malcontent. I don't regret what I did for Nelson Mandela and the fight for freedom in South Africa against the major interests of this country. We've been in a battle for a long time, and that battle continues. Yes, sir. I've been invited to speak at Coretta Scott's funeral on that Tuesday that she was to be interned. The previous Monday morning, I had received a phone call which told me that since the President of the United States had made the statement that he would be coming to the ceremonies, that the invitation that was extended to me would be withdrawn. I confronted some individuals who were central to the event, and I informed them of this fact, and they informed me that that was the case, and that's the way it would play itself out. It was for me a sad moment, but I didn't linger on it. If the President of the United States, who was looked upon with such disfavor by so many people in this nation, in particular people of color, and he should come into one of our most sacred moments and choose to defile our moment of mourning by what he did, by showing up there and being very hypocritical, I think speaks for itself. What I think people should measure is the extent to which the right-wing extreme forces in this country have reached into the hearts of our own community and have begun to set in motion a divide and conquer mode. Some of us refuse to play that game. It's what it was. We just have to deal with it in any way we can.
Well, President is here right now, so had you been allowed to speak there, what would you have said about Coretta Scott King and her legacy?
I would have said, and I can always give you the context of the specifics, because it was a speech that I had put together. But I talked about her nobility. I talked about her dignity, much that has been said by others. But I also talked about the fact that she carried a quiet burden. She lost her husband. She was put upon by a lot in our society that is painful. She had been pursued and hounded by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Her private life was continually being invaded. She had been threatened. Her home had been bombed. She'd gotten all kinds of terrifying mail. And she stood strong through that whole period and even on to in further life. She was a great peace activist. She was a peace activist before she became a civil rights activist. And she lent her name and her dignity and her power to the cause of peace. And I would have continued to say that we had lost a valiant warrior, that she would be missed, but that we should not linger too long on mourning. She would not want that, because on the day that Dr. King was murdered, and I flew the following day to be with her and to nurture the family through the anguish of the moment, in a discussion that she and I had, it was concluded that the service that she could do to this nation would have been to immediately step, even before Dr. King had been buried, to step into the void that had been left and to go to Memphis and to lead the march by the sanitation workers. Her courage and her will and her strength to do that and her commitment to it was a tiny display of her magnificence as a mother, as the wife of a great hero, and her feelings for the health of this nation. She worried that America would sink into an abyss of violence. And I would have, which is what I said in the speech, I would have honored her in ways that maybe many people did not know of. I'm sorry, there's a hearing problem here.
If the students leave here tonight, one message from you,
that despite the hurdles that we face, despite the disappointments many of us are experiencing, despite the extreme attempt to reverse so many gains that we made during the Civil Rights Movement, the Voting Rights Act being under scrutiny and attack, affirmative action being diminished, gerrymandering of voting districts, the kind of experiences that we're having in Katrina and other places where misery abounds, that we will stay the course and keep the faith. America is a remarkable nation, and its being a remarkable nation is really because of what lies deep in the hearts of all of its citizens. And we should not surrender our commitment to this nation and to what it must yet live up to in the promise that it has made. That Constitution was written for all the people of this country, and all the people of this nation have a responsibility to protect it, to make it breathe healthily, and to carry it on into the promised future. Teddy Roosevelt once said that when our Constitution and our nation is under attack from those who are responsible for leading this nation and fulfilling the articles of our Constitution, when they diminish that, it is the responsibility of every citizen to not only respond to that by denouncing it, but they should also remove those people who have done such a deed. And those who do not do that should be viewed as patriotic, as an act of patriotic treason, was his exact words. I think that's a wonderful way to put it. Which of us will be looked upon as having been treasonous in our absence of patriotism towards the embracing and the upholding of the Constitution of this great nation? I am as much an American, if not more, than those who have made that claim and are seeking to undermine this country. Paul Revere was not for naught. Frederick Douglass was not for naught. Abe Lincoln was not for naught. John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy and all that people know about this nation. That is what America is truly about, not those who seek to undermine these principles. That's what I'd have the students leave here with, the understanding and the belief and the commitment to that this America is worth fighting for, and they should be snapped out of their lethargy.
Richland from WRIW Radio. There was a gigantic explosion of folk music in the 50s that you were leading. Tell us a little bit about that, and then your work with Gord Burgess, writing work with him over the years.
The explosion of the folk art in that early period, late 40s into the very early 50s, and then on into the up to and including the 70s, was really an extension of something that was very much evident in American culture, in American life, in the whole emergence of the labor movement. Many songs began to appear from all corners of this nation. The blacks, the whites, Native Americans, Hispanics, songs that women sang revealing their sensitivity to the plights that they experienced. Great writers and great people like Woody Guthrie and Cisco Houston, certainly people like Lead Belly. And when I saw the riches of that culture, when I saw the deeper humanity, the deeper power of the use of verse, the poetry of American folklore, I saw in it a place where I could grow and flourish. In my own way, in my own style, I integrated all of that into my own repertoire. And although I had not anticipated that there would have been a response such as I received, I was most encouraged by the kind of popularity that emerged for that music and for many of us. Pete Seeger, the Weavers, all of the young Turks that came up, the Kingston Trio, and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and ultimately Bob Dylan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was a remarkable time. And it carried forth a legacy that was already in the American DNA, cultural DNA. So all I was really an extension of it, and was very much rewarded for the opportunity to do that. Incidentally, that same grace has not been buried. It's still there. But now we must look at it in its global context, because not just the folklore of America is continuing to reveal itself, but also the music that comes out of so many other places in our new globalization. The great music coming out of Africa, the great music coming out of the Slavic nations, the great music emerging from India, and certainly the remarkable music coming out of Latin America, which has begun to capture fancy. And the fact that we have the internet and the website and all that stuff going for us means that we just have greater riches to plunder. And I hope we take advantage of it.
Hi, I was wondering if you could state your opinion on President Bush's current divide court deal taking place.
My opinion on what?
The divide court deals that are taking place as far as the courts being, there were 6 courts that are being sold to foreign countries.
You like my opinion on the security issues involving our 6 ports? Good. Now let me see, which hat is that? I don't have much thought on it. I think our nation sits in the grip of the psychology of terror. And a lot is done in the name of anti-terrorism and anti-terrorists observations. Should our ports be guarded? Should our borders be protected? I guess so. I thought they were always protected. It seems to me that if anybody's up to any real mischief, there's a lot of territory. A lot of things are still coming. We can't even stop drugs from coming into this country, and we have everybody working on that. We have wars that are being fought all over the world. There's something terribly mischievous about this whole debate and this preoccupation we're having with our unprotected borders. I believe that ultimately the best in humankind will be a world without borders, a world without the need for passport, a world without the need for nationalism. And I'd rather see our energies being spent in how to avert war and to end war and to end international animus, so that the need for our borders to be protected will no longer be a measure for our society. Whether it is forces from the Middle East or forces from England or other places, I understand that we have always been administered to by a lot of foreign workers, people who come from other parts of the world. So I have no particular answers one way or the other, whether they come from the Middle East or they come from Africa or they come from Europe. They'll come from where they must come. What I would do, however, is to examine the details of such a suggestion. This is the greatest government of secrecy this nation has ever known in the history of the United States of America. We are held from any information that would help inform our people as to the health and the welfare of this country. And when you give away contracts that are not bidded on, when you invite people to recklessly spend billions of dollars for which they're not accountable, when all of a sudden you wake up one day without any discourse in our Congress on what to do in the protection of the borders of this nation, and all of a sudden an ultimatum is delivered, I suspect that there's great chicanery here, that there's a great deal of subversion. There's a lot that's going on that we don't know and are meant not to know. So I'd hope that all those who have the capacity to investigate and dig deeply would find out what is the subtext to all of this, what's truly going on, because I believe what this is doing is not dealing directly with the truth. It is covering up something. Finding out what that something is our mission.
Thank you everyone for coming out this evening. We're preparing to go over to the 7 p.m. lecture.
Absolutely.
Hi, Sachin Java.
Nice to see you.
Nice. Actually, Dubai. Dubai.
Dubai. You are?
Yeah.
From Dubai?
Yep.
I love it. I've been there.
Yep.
Oh, yes. My God, yes. It's one of the great miracles we